Welcome to the Circular South Africa Lunch Club, where we will be talking about circularity in human settlements. Hold on 2 seconds while I share my screen. So just quickly, what is a lunch club? It's a short duration online session where we create an ongoing conversation around circularity, and also it is a platform to meet for us to have informative, accessible, and informal discussions. So I'm going to be your host. I'm Gabriella from Circular South Africa, and with me today I have Kevin Kimwelle, who is a community architect, a project manager, and a sustainability researcher whose work speaks directly to circularity. Before we jump into Kevin's work, I'm going to quickly chat about Circular South Africa and why circularity is important. So the circular economy provides us with a regenerative alternative compared to our linear economy, which has a take, make, and weigh system at the moment. At CSA, we align with the three fundamental principles that the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has put forward, which are designing out waste and pollution, keeping materials at their highest value, and regenerating natural systems. But we've also added a fourth principle, which is benefiting all members of society. And that is, of course, very important in the South African context. So a circular economy provides a cross-sectoral systems approach to the entire economy, which in many ways makes it complex as different sectors impact and connect with one another, but it also lends itself to so many opportunities and solutions. At CSA, we are on the mission to amplify the potential and value of the just circular economy across South Africa through all the activities that we do. So this year, we've planned our activities around different focus sectors every month. These sectors have been identified by the CSIR as the most resource-intensive sectors, but also the most ripe for circular economy interventions. And in Jan, we had our co-creation lunch club. In Feb, we focused on mining, and of course, this month is human settlements. So part of what we do at CSA is science communication, where we have launched a series of infographics that break down circular economy opportunities in these sectors, speaking to the four principles and also showing how each resource-intensive sector links to the other. You can access all of these illustrations on our Knowledge Hub too, so definitely become a member. And just diving straight into human settlements and contextualizing ourselves. For the most part, most of our cities are characterized by low-density buildings and experience urban sprawl, which is often still defined by the apartheid legacy that generated these conditions in the first place. It's resulted in inefficient urban forms, reduced access to services and amenities, long commuting distances, where low-income households often have to pay the highest price for this. Urban sprawl also makes transports, roads, energy, water, and sanitation services more expensive to build and maintain, which is something that you can see quite clearly in Joburg. And at the end of the day, this exacerbates the negative socioeconomic and environmental impacts. So there is an opportunity to address these issues through more circular approaches. And this is an illustration that speaks to the circular economy opportunities for human settlements in South Africa and breaks them down using the four principles that we discussed earlier. I think it's also important when looking at human settlements to look at them across scales. So how can we find and apply circularity from the scale of a house to a neighborhood block to a city region with all the systems and services connected to it? So yeah, definitely recommend you hop on it and spend more time on this illustration. So these are just a few of the circular economy interventions that the CSIR proposed for South Africa in their technical report that I wanted to share with you. But some highlights include planning for a 15-minute neighborhood, which means that every household has access to services and amenities in close proximity. We've also got ideas of designing for disassembly, equipment libraries, grey water systems, material reuse, something that Kevin's definitely going to speak to, SUDS or sustainable urban drainage systems, localizing supply chains, and designing for multi-use and flexible spaces. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Kevin, who I'm really excited to hear from. He's going to be speaking about his work in circularity and sustainability in architecture and designing toward local, social, and economic impact. So over to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriella. So I work in the circularity space, and it's a space that I've worked in for a couple of years. I call myself a community architect because my approach is to use community, large groups of people towards the green agenda and circularity. Um, in Africa, ironically, circularity is not new. I'm referring to communities of practice within the peri-urban spaces. You know, everything is recycled, reused to death. This is mainly due to, I'd say, maybe poverty or just the nature of being able to reuse stuff. However, in mainstream architecture, we do not do this so much for various reasons, be it legislature, be it the risk that engineers and architects in the city see in reusing building materials or construction demolition waste, as it's called, CDW. So I set myself the task of creating various projects that I'm going to present to you that kind of showcase and say that it is possible to recycle and to reuse specifically material that is either from the industrial or from whichever source it is, and also from the demolition sites, and reuse it into buildings. So I'll start with the story of Kustamoko. A typical waste collector, this is what he uses for collecting his trash, and he makes a living out of it through barter trade. So I followed Kustamoko for about 9 months, and all I did was observe him, try and understand what he did, try and understand the efficiencies of what he did, and also appreciate him as a person and the fact that he's hardworking, that he provides for his family. He has a partner, a daughter, and two dogs, Lion and Lady. And through that process, we were able to go into a second-hand shop with him. He chose that bicycle because it was his style, and the rest of it, the second half of it, was a second bicycle. And what we did is we salvaged material from Isuzu Motors. So that's all the panels and the lights and everything that you're seeing there. And with him, we were able to build this bicycle, which he was then able to use for collecting material. And this is a plastic paper and things like that. In this case, that enabled him to trade, to get a better trade, but also give him visibility on the road. And because all the other push cuts and were getting hit by vehicles, there's a sense of dignity also that comes with this, because people see this bike and they're able to appreciate him for the trade that he does. For Just Lovo is a community in transition, meaning what had happened when we met them is a piece of land had been allocated and for with this community, and after a lot of negotiations, and like everything, like as it is in South Africa, where the responsibility of municipality and government is so large, so what we asked there was, are we able to create a temporary structure that can host a certain group of activities while the RDP houses roll in, while schools and clinics and things that like that roll in. And what we did is, after a lot of negotiations with the local municipality, development agencies, and other stakeholders, including NGOs and local local stakeholders, we created this structure from the very same material that we realized that this community had access to. And this is material because this is in Port Elizabeth. This community was in the peri-urban space bordering various industries. So they had a lot of access to pallets. They had a lot of access to wood and that kind of thing. And when I walked through this community, and this is again another process of about a year of really just mapping the community and understanding what they did, is we mapped the material, we saw how much there was, we asked them where they were getting it from, we asked them who were building the structures, and then we took that material, the very same material, we accelerated the process of collecting it, understanding what the failure points of it was, and we rebuilt this community center. This entire center is built up of about 80% recycled material. It's a passive design building, which means it's lifted off the ground so that water doesn't damage it. It has natural cooling, natural ventilation. And the other thing we notice in this community, like many township communities in South Africa, is there's a problem of alcoholism. And wherever the reason may be, could be just the stress of life, people just indulging in alcohol due to succumbing to the pressures of life. But anyway, there's a lot of bottles that are broken. All that, what we did is we looked at the design that used that very same material that is broken and discarded, and we gave it a second meaning and a second life to it. And in this case, what you're seeing here is 2,500 wine bottles that are put together. These bottles, we engaged with various restaurants within the CBD of the city so that we could collect them, clean them, find the exact same type of bottle, just different colors. Over here, you can see the pallets again. And what we did is with the Amalulu toilets, which are designed in Johannesburg, we found that company, they donated it to us, and we kind of remodeled toilets so that we could have the toilets for the kiddies on that side. For the Alliance Francaise, which is a festival, music festival, the entire festival, what our strategy was right from the beginning to speak about circularity, recycle and reuse. And so you can see the poster over there. The backdrop is pallets, but what was more is all the furniture for the festival was from pallets, including the main stage. So this is what you're looking here is paper tubes that we collected about a period of about 6 months. So you can imagine I had a room just full of these paper tubes, and we cut them and we built this structure here, which was part of the main stage with lights and everything. And people could not believe that this was made out of paper tubes. And we engaged a couple of artists from that very same community and youth and young students to get involved in building this. And this structure was about the size of the road, so about 15 meters by about 12 meters high. So it was all held up through scaffolding. For Gogo Selena, this is about an 80-year-old lady. And what we did here is we built her a new home from waste material from the motor car industry. What had happened is that the community had identified her because her structure was collapsing. Her original structure was built in 1954, so the roof was actually coming off. The ceiling was falling apart. And instead of just repairing that, what we did is we built her a new home because she takes care of her granddaughter. The space that they were living in was not great for them to, for her to live in it and study and kind of expect her to pass matric and, and everything. So we decided, well, let's build a new home, 2-bedroom, with a study for the daughter so that she can be able to excel in her studies. So essentially, we took the Isuzu collapsible wood, we stripped that wood and we made laminate into new beams and columns, which is what you're seeing. And we stitched together this house. This house is I'd say about 90% recycled. So even the foam inside the walls is from recycled refrigerated truck foam. Refrigerated containers usually have foam to create thermal insulation. So we reuse that in this building. And it was long hours in creating this. Oh, and by the way, this was built in the middle of the COVID crisis. So we could only be about 5 of us on site building this structure. This is Gogo Selina in her new home with a visitor here. And the home itself, oh, by the way, the floor, we got it from Isuzu. They had demolished an old office, and we took that office wood and rebuilt the entire floor from it. And I guess this is why we do what we do, just seeing the change that is possible and giving others new life and hope beyond the building. For the V&A waterfront, this project is very interesting because in this case, we actually took the idea of circulation as circularity to the limit, and what I mean by that is we mapped the area and we realized there was about 9 different. So this project, it was 3 years in the working. For a year, all we did was collect material, clean it up, understand it, see where we can reuse it, negotiations with the city of Cape Town so that they could approve this design. And so it was a bit of a long process, educating our workers, because I intentionally took workers from the township, brought them to the area, and started teaching them how to recycle and reuse. So this is a bit of a map, just kind of shows where the various materials are coming from. So we tracked everything that was coming from this site, so that we could have an inventory of materials. And through that inventory of materials, we're able to design and realign a design until we could get something that worked. This is a very rudimentary perspective, and they needed to be this rudimentary, not fancy at all, so that everybody could understand what goes where and why. So, you can clearly see where the salvage bricks are going, the steel fencing, that palisade fencing, and the one bottle wall. And so the design looks at circularity within the building itself, but also in terms of food. So the design is a kiosk or a food pavilion. So next to it is a garden. So you can see the garden over there, and the food is grown, spices, vegetable, etc., to supplement what goes into this cafeteria. Rainwater collection obviously is a big thing. So in all the work that we do, passive design by default is the approach that we use, meaning natural lighting, natural ventilation, we rethink rainwater collection, etc., etc. So that's the design that you see there. But in terms of circularity, I think, especially in this talk, so what's interesting about this building is we tackled the two waste materials that come from demolition sites that have the highest carbon footprint. And the two are actually concrete and gypsum boards. What we've done here is we took the concrete, broke it down into various components, and we were able to reuse them. In fact, what you're looking at is 3 different concrete mixes for different users, from structural to screed use, So we were able to reuse and figure out how to reuse concrete, demolished concrete. The other is gypsum boards, just because what happens with gypsum boards is whenever they go to landfill, wherever there's a gypsum board, nothing grows. It just totally destroys the earth. And what we did is we took that gypsum board, we were able to figure out a way of taking the paper out of it, crushing it, and reusing it in 3 different ways, or 3 different textures. So what you're looking at the bottom screen is essentially as a form of finish for pointing and jointing that uses this waste. Instead of that waste going to landfill, we're able to use it back in terms of aesthetics. And interestingly, that building actually got nominated for the Comstrat Awards. It was one of 3 buildings were nominated from Africa, and it was purely by nomination, meaning that they go through a very extensive process to ensure that the buildings nominated are green. This is a bit of a story board from South Africa's network, which is I think it was on a best practice for Nelson Mandela, and it kind of tries to tell people my story in a cartoon format. And I think the thing about it that I'd really like to pull into this presentation is the idea that the circularity cannot be attained by an individual or an individual practice in terms of an architecture practice or individual company. It has to be, for me, I think circularity is one of those things in this generation that we have to think about it holistically in terms of including everybody, researchers, communities, architects, or professional consultants, entire communities. And that's where the success of these projects has been in being able to bring different people together in order to be able to attain buildings that are highly recycled. And I think that's the last slide. So that's the work I do. The work I do is very much, and that's, I think you can see why I call myself a community architect. The idea of community architecture here is being able to pull different people, different stakeholders into the circular space, and the circular space then being much more impactful, especially in Africa, where we have a big discrepancy about between those who have and those who do not have. And this here is an opportunity for us in Africa to really ride on this wave of circularity and give it meaningful impact, social economic, because you can imagine the kind of you can already see the social impact. Now imagine about the economic impact, the kind of businesses that we could roll out of using demolition waste. Obviously, there would have to be a form of central collection place. That's a business opportunity. Middlemen who handle transportation, all these are business opportunities that can really be used if we start looking at demolition waste as a resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was absolutely fantastic and just really, really inspiring to hear about all the amazing work that you've done. I do have what I think is really nice about your work is that it really rounds up the circular economy in its four principles that we described earlier. So thinking about designing out waste and pollution, keeping their materials at the highest value, regenerating nature. I see all the sort of agricultural practices that you're bringing in, the water saving and collection techniques, which are very circular too. But the fourth principle that we at CSA have also added, which is benefiting all members of society, is something so important in the African and especially South African context. And I think your work speaks to all of it, and it's a brilliant example of how circularity can be achieved in this space. So I was just quite curious around the people that you bring into your projects, right? And who those stakeholders are and how they're involved in your project, the skills, but also the opportunities that you develop for those people, specifically the ones who are, looking at the demolished material, but also transforming it into something new, adding new value to it. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think this kind of architecture is a bit different, in terms of architecture, we usually look at clients and, engineers, which is a part of the professional consultants, and then artisans in terms of the crafts and subcontractors, etc., etc. So using that same kind of mapping, think about, blow that up a little larger and think about a community, a local community that you're engaging with. And in the same way, you kind of have a form of structure, right? There's a council who have to have buy-in. So I ensure that in all our work, we make sure that the municipality is one of our stakeholders, because that helps big time in actually getting these designs not only just approved, but getting buy-in from them. And then there's the professional consultant team who have to be convinced that this material can be recycled. And this is where the university comes in place, or academia testing this material, putting it in the lab, giving them the results, and then putting it in commercial labs and getting the same results. And then everybody is up here about that. But then in the community, there is a counselor. There's call them committees, community committees, getting the buy-in from these community committees, and while you're doing that, also mapping the community to see the opportunities that lie there. So, for example, I'll give you in Joslovo, that project, as I said, that process just on its own took a year. And while that is happening, at the back of my mind, I'm mapping the community and trying to understand, oh, there's a women's group, and this is when they meet. This is how they do their thing. There's a crash over there. And, it's a low-lying fruit in terms of starting the work from them because the kids need that intervention immediately. There's an NGO that is willing to put in a seed fund, and their conditions is that it should be used for a soup kitchen and a church, and that's an asset, and at the same time, looking at the youth who are kind of hopelessly sitting around and kind of identifying them and, mapping them and realizing, okay, there's a boys group over there, there's a girls group. And why I'm telling you all of this is because eventually, as the building is coming together, we were able to incubate about 9 community members from this group, and we took them through to the hop factory for incubation. Out of those 3 went in, and we were able to take in 3 businesses. And because of the building process, which was another 2 years, we were able to then find a young man from the community who was able to help us with our woodwork, who started his own business, continued his own business because it had already begun. He bought himself 2 cars, 2 little Unos, and he's having direct impact in this community. A lady, Hilda, was able to start her own business, take her child to a Model C school, So it's a very different. I think of an architecture of community in terms of the social side of it, impacting the community and really growing businesses, and the buildings just end up being a manifestation. But more than that, I think the circularity aspect of it is it's such a big problem that you cannot just tackle it purely from a building side. You have to think
100%.
wider. You have to really look at it in terms of food production, as you mentioned earlier. You have to think about it in terms of the tangible impact that it can have on a community so that they can have a buy-in and come with you.
100%. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
amazing. And there's something also that just popped into my mind now. Your interventions are quite particular, and they're like, limited to, the VNA or limited to the
The
community and
locality.
just, the locality,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
When you
yeah.
think about scaling of the solution, so thinking about how we can apply this kind of model of building into more urban environments. So in our cities, but also in township spaces or in rural areas, how do you see that working, like on a systems
Uh,
level?
Yeah, on a systems level, I think we set, as you saw the presentation, we really started small and we kept
Yeah,
growing. The projects I've not mentioned here, education centers, recycling facilities that we were part of this journey. And I think the VNA project was a really good challenge of the status quo, because you wouldn't think that you could find a 98% recycled material, because people have this perception of recycled material being trash, it looking terrible,
yes,
etc., and just breaking that thinking. And I think from what you can see already, it's scalable. There
yeah,
needs to be a way of really understanding where the material is coming from. There is a lot of material that is just walk into any landfill. I know South African landfills now are starting to reject construction and demolition waste,
yeah,
but there is so much waste, and so the issue is not the waste part. The issue is actually the on 2 levels. One is the understanding on what you can do with it. And the second part is the technology on how to do. And many times we look to the West for the technology side of it. And kind of this work proves that you actually don't need to look to the West for the technology. You don't need massive caterpillars and earth movers. And actually, we have affordable labor in Africa. For that VNA project, what I did is I worked with a community of bricklayers, and They have the knowledge and expertise, and we're able to very quickly take apart huge chunks of building. Once the bulldozers or whatever had knocked the building out, we were able to clean those bricks and, reuse them and give them new life. In fact, you need soft hands to be able to work with the recycled material, because as soon as the mechanized methods go in, it only makes economic sense for you to just kind of demolish everything and wreck it up. But when
Yeah,
you work with hands, you're able to take down the windows, you're able to take down the doors, etc., etc., at the cost you would anyway have used for mechanized. So it's kind of putting that across to funders or builders or property owners and the likes, that actually the cost of demolishing a building by hand versus the cost of demolishing building mechanically could you could actually be saving more and creating more social economic impact. I mean, there's areas obviously that you cannot demolish an entire concrete building by hand. So it's kind of really understanding the pros and cons of either method, and then really maximizing on the opportunity of engaging the social economic impact part of it, because that's what we need in Africa.
100%.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But to answer
So
your
cool.
question, yes, it is scalable. The work we've done has been from the smallest waste bike project to this. We've done education centers. You've seen there being a project which is a food pavilion. We've done exhibition spaces. Africa is just ready and right for this.
100%. Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for joining us on our Circular Lunch Club. And yeah, we look forward to chatting to you and following your work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriella. I appreciate it too. Thanks for the
Okay.
invitation.
Yes, thank you everybody for joining our lunch club today. Please remember to rate our lunch club. It really helps support us and the work that we do. So you can click on the QR code below and connect with us via all our channels on our website or through the info email address. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. No problem. So